Alright, I think I'm live. Hopefully. 13 love, 13 knowledge, 13 wisdom, 13 respect. This is your creation 13. Tonight we're going to be talking about identifying each deity spirit within your life, which is connected to addiction, to trauma from the past or present, trials and tribulations within your life, identifying what goes on around you, and the people that are within your life, right? Identifying these deities or these spirits, right? And they work for both the good and the bad. And at the end of the day, you learn about balance and you learn about maintaining the structure of your life, becoming your own boss at an essence, right? Because we are our own bosses. You have a body, an avatar that you have to take care of, right? Nobody else is going to take care of it for you. Now, in some cases, maybe the circumstance might be different, and you may need someone to help take care of you, and that's okay too. That's okay too. But one of the things, the reason why I brought this up and kind of bringing everything together as these videos progress is identifying these spirits within your life. People don't talk about it like this to an extent, and I feel people don't explain how there is spirits attached, right? A lot of people think that that there's perceived demons involved, or angels involved, right? At the end of the day, angel translates as messenger, and demon is daemon, which is a deity. Period. It's just a deity. Now, the agenda with each messenger or deity is going to be based upon how they affect your life and identifying those experiences. I've been really studying Daniel Adams' work, and I've talked about it previously in previous videos, because he really caught my attention on how he's bringing these deities to the surface. Now, are some made up? It's possible, but there's some that are very real. And I noticed a consistent pattern when these deities showed up is that they would use Bible references or names to identify itself or hide itself. And I found that fascinating. I'm like, you know what? That makes a lot of sense that that entity would hide itself. Now, we have to be aware and realize, I know I'm all over the place here, but trying to just kind of bring it all together. Identifying that you have contracts with these deities is hugely important. And why is it important? Because it helps you develop and grow within your life. So if you want to learn about love, you're going to sign a contract with the deity that is attached to love. If you want to experience depression, you're going to sign a contract with the spirit, the deity of depression, right? And some of it's forced, some of it is programmed, and we have to be aware of that. Because lower level experiences like depression and stress and negativity, things of that nature, falls into different contracts, and it lowers your existence or the reason why you're here, right? We're here to develop and grow, but we also got to learn about how these matrix structures work, how this game works. You're either a game changer or a CPU at the end of the day. That triggered people. I noticed that triggered people. And I'm not saying that everybody is a CPU, but if you follow the ways of the world, you are pretty much a CPU because you're playing within the field of the matrix programs that are here for you to interact with. Now, if you're a game changer, you're going to be playing outside the barriers. For anybody who's played video games, there's always a certain part in the game, if it's open world, where you can't get by. There's an invisible barrier that keeps you from moving forward because the game is done and made. It's not as open of a world as you thought it was. And I always came across that in video games. And I thought that was a good analogy of realizing the limitations of the matrix structure and identifying everything outside. You become self-aware. And when I had my awakening for 3 to 4 years, I was in deep meditation with Christ, and Christ was identifying these spirits within my life, right? These deities within my life. And he was showing me that you need to put each deity, each spirit, and keep it in its chair. Do not allow it to be in front of you. Don't allow it to walk beside you. Don't allow it to be behind you. You sit it in a chair and you keep it there. When one of these deities or multiple deities get up and try to go in front of you or beside you, you tell them to sit. That is not their role. Their role, however, is to teach you. It is to teach you. And like I said, it can be love, happiness, joy, or it can be addiction, depression, chaos, disorder, whatever it may be. That's the spirit's job. And it's important to realize that once you learn what that spirit's job was, what that contract was, and that contract was fulfilled, then you go to the surrender process that I was taught in church and from Christ. Then you go to the surrender process. Be like, hey, I surrender the stress to you. I release the stress out of me. I am getting rid of the contract and the spirit, the deity that's attached to it, and I am releasing it to the ethers. It is leaving my body. The chair that is sat in is gone. The chair is gone. So that's one less deity I got to have trials and tribulations with, right? And we have that continuously. And it's so important to realize the inner wrestlings that you have with yourself. Because ultimately, I'd say about, even maybe 95% of the time, we wrestle with ourselves. And it could be, like I said, it could be good or negative, right? It's a balance of duality within our very lives. And we have to deal with those. Plus, it doesn't help with any kind of trauma or abuse that you may have experienced as you grew up, right? As well as the generational curses that are placed upon our lives. That's hugely important. And I'm learning that and seeing that more and more with some of the conversations I'm having with people is those generational curses, which at the end of the day are generational contracts that are signed to each descendant, and they're a part of us. But we can get rid of those contracts as long as we become aware of it. We read the contract, we identify the deity behind the contract, and then once we learn and it no longer serves its purpose, then we can release the contract from our being, from our essence, from just us. So if you have siblings, if they want to get rid of that generational curse, they're going to have to identify that as well. This seems like a lot of work, but that's what the inner work is all about, right? Christ was all about going within yourself, healing yourself, fixing yourself, going to the Creator, going to Christ to learn about us, to learn about the wrestlings within us, right? Because at the end of the day, you come home to yourself. When you wake up, you see yourself in the mirror. So it is all the mindsets of realizing and being self-aware, because so many people get trapped in the world. So many people get trapped with the programs of this reality, which goes into addictions. Addictions are huge for a lot of people. Whether you're addicted to TikTok, whether you're addicted to drugs and alcohol, you're addicted to porn, you're addicted to buying stuff, you're addicted to being a people pleaser, being a boss or a know-it-all, or you're an anarchist. Whatever it is, there's a deity that is attached to your being. That is an addiction. It's a number one thing that overshadows who you are as a soul. It overshadows you. There's some program that has created an addiction within your life, and you have to identify it. And it's huge. Pride is another one. Pride is huge. And they're celebrating what? They're celebrating pride. The word pride itself. You can identify with whatever kind of culture or whatever kind of program that people are feeding to you, but ultimately it is feeding the deity, the spirit of pride. It is the deity of pride month at the end of the day, right? And if that triggers people, then it triggers people, and you should identify that. Identify that trigger. Identify that spirit, that deity that is triggering you, right? And the best way to do that is to write everything down on a piece of paper. Your strengths, your weaknesses, your addictions. There's an email I got to read, but it was talking about some other perceived disorders within your life, right? And what is a disorder? It can be disinformation. It can be a spirit within you that causes different functions that it's a part of you. Like, say if you have like an arm twitch or a neck issue, a back issue, a leg issue, whatever it is, that deity, that spirit is attached and is dominating that part of the body. I ain't no doctor, but there is proof, scientific proof and testimonies that these deities, these spirits, can attach themselves to certain parts of the body, which goes into an interesting thing I'm reading in the Bible, and people have talked about it, you can look it up, is that our body itself, the Bible tells us about the body. It tells us north, south, east, and west, right? It teaches us about the four corners of the body, and there is four main deities to each side of the body, as well as the center, which is going to be you, your soul, right? Your sun, the center of it all, right? And it's just, and what does our body do when we do this? It is the sign of the cross, the crossroads. And when you see that, you have the sun right here in the center of it all, right? And it passes judgment and shadows to each side depending on where you're at in your life. If you're of the lower, we say the chakra system, if you're of the lower chakras, right, then the sun has a harder time pushing light down. But if the sun is here and you're going up this way, it's going to be much brighter up here, right? Because your feet, it's all the roots, and the roots go into the darkness. It goes into the underworld, right? And then when you go up, you're up at the surface level. So it's very interesting. There's so many ways you can discuss these things. But at the end of the day, I don't want to make this too long. is to write these things down. Write down your addictions. Write down your past traumas. Write down what makes you happy. Right? Write down what you love, what you like to do. Um, Write down the disorders within your life. Do you have different kind of twitches? Do you have seizures? Do you have these different kind of things within your life? Right? Identify these things because they're there for a reason. Again, I'm not claiming I'm a doctor, but there is testimonies that I've said before. There's testimonies that have shown that people have self-healed themselves, right? Whether it be through prayer, meditation, they have self-healed themselves from a lot of these medical disorders, and they were cured. And the doctors were just like, oh, "What happened?" Right? And therefore, it's people state it's the miracle of God or the miracle of Christ. But you got to have the will and intent to want to heal yourself at the end of the day. Will and intent is huge. If you don't have the will and intent, then you allow these deities, these spirits, these addictions, these disorders to take over your life. There's somebody I work with that's in a wheelchair, and you got to realize, that there's still people, right? And man, that would for me personally, if that happened to me, that would be devastating. Losing your ability to walk, losing your ability to do a lot of these things that you took for granted, right? But with the will and intent, right, you realize, hey, you're still alive. You can still enjoy life. So, when I see the guy in the wheelchair, I'm just like, that guy has a lot of heart and a lot of will and intent to continue, right? Because that can be very devastating. There's you have to take a lot of personal care when you're in a wheelchair because you've lost the abilities down there. You have to carry a bag that holds your bodily fluids and all that stuff, and take care of it and all that stuff. So it's maintaining a new way of living life. But he just acts like everything's normal. We can joke around and everything, and that's the beauty of it, is that you can either choose to be in misery, or you can use to accept this, learn from it, but still live your life as a whole, which is huge. Not everybody goes through that, but if you can get that will and intent to uplift your spirits, right? The spirit of upliftment, the deity of upliftment, then it will change your perception. And then you're also relatable to those who also have life in a wheelchair, because there's lots of people that live in wheelchairs for the rest of their lives. So it's very interesting. Now, can you self-heal yourself from those injuries? I believe you can. I do. I believe you can. And the reason why I say I believe is because it is uncertain, but I do believe that it is possible to self-heal yourself. We're just not there yet. But I do believe that there is a lot of technologies that can restore what has been damaged, because everything is alive. I was watching Princess Mononoke anime, and I may be saying it wrong. It might be Mononoke, something like that. One of the Studio Chibi animes, and I was just kind of observing a lot of because it talks about the spirit animals and when things die and things like that. And I was like, we have to view our skeleton, right? View our skeleton. It is a hard structure that forms later on, right? Because when we're being formed within the womb, we're just DNA and bodily liquid, right? And we just kind of form, and we continue to form. And it's not really until the baby is fully developed and goes out of the mother's womb and stays out of the mother's womb that your skeleton begins to harden. Your skeleton begins to harden. And I was just thinking about this. I'm like, that's very interesting. That's fascinating, because we have life, we have living tissue that changes, restructures, and rejuvenates our whole being, right? And the only way that continuously moves or flows is because of that hard skeleton, and then the hard cartilage and muscles that surround the bones to keep things alive. And I just found that very fascinating. And then when you pass away, then that flow stops. The blood, right? The blood of life, the river of life, that flow stops, and then your tissue kind of degrades and falls off and decays. But the hard shell, the skeleton, remains after that. And I found that very interesting. And at the end of the day, it's all attached to this, is that every time you release a spirit, a deity that was causing you stress or disorder, things of that nature, you release a piece of you release that contract that was kind of a decay within your life, right? Because you can see within just the facial features alone, you can see stress and disorder and chaos within someone's life just from their expressions. Because sometimes people look super old and they can be like 30, and then you look at 60-year-olds who look like they're 30 because they look younger, because they're not filled with that stress or a disorder within their life. So there's always some kind of spirit or deity that is affecting our whole essence, the wrestling within ourselves at the end of the day. I'm going to go ahead and end on that because I feel like I'm just kind of bouncing everywhere. I got a lot going on, and I'm working on these presentations that deal with identifying spirits. And I just kind of wanted to share this since I haven't made a video in a couple of weeks to identify at the end of the day. So write down on a piece of paper your strengths and your weaknesses, your disorders, addictions, traumas and abuse from the past or present. Write these all down and write a solution to each of these. And if you identify these spirits or these deities and write down who they are, right? Is it stress? Is it what kind of addiction is it? What kind of disorder is it? And attach it to the deity of stress, right? The spirit of stress. The deity of love, the spirit of love, right? Write those down and identify those spirits and those contracts. And then your goal is, because it's going to be about you at the end of the day, Christ is my rock foundation, couldn't do it without him. But if you have Christ, he can help aid you in releasing these deities, these contracts, once you fulfilled them. You have to fulfill that contract so they can leave. Because if you don't learn from it, then that contract is still there. Now, the kicker is make sure you're the one that is releasing, right? I talked about Daniel Adams, and like I said, there's a lot of things that are being revealed right now about releasing these deities without the person's consent, and I talked about that in the previous video. It's important to release these spirits on your own and don't let somebody else do it, because that breach of contract for the user, that user is going to have to be held accountable for that. You won't be held accountable, but that person will. Your accountability is going to be, did you learn your lessons from these spirits that are within your life, right? And the process of surrendering and releasing them out of your life is key. But you can maintain The good ones, like the spirit of love and joy and happiness, right? But eventually, here's the kicker, is you want to fulfill all these contracts so you become a new being. And that's something that I'll talk about when it's time to talk about it. But at the end of the day, identify. And is it all part of sorcery? Well, you got to realize, what are spirits? What are deities? My research is, when did these deities, these spirits, manifest themselves? And why is there such a wrestling within our lives because of these deities and spirits? It's because of some kind of sorcery and witchcraft that continued through generations. And I find that very interesting and fascinating as well. So anyways, I'm going to get out of here. I'm rambling. Hopefully you get something out of this. Identify everything within your life. Self-reflect. And when you do that, your will and intent becomes stronger. You become stronger. Your faith will build with Christ and the Creator. And you'll continue to learn and grow. And the key is to help others as you conquer and get rid of these contracts that are within your life. You can help people as well. So yeah, I'm going to get out of here and push the stop button before I keep talking anymore. So love yourself. Keep shining bright. I'll talk to y'all later. As soon as I find the stop button here. All right. Good night, guys.